There we go. Awesome. Fantastic. Well, hello everyone. For those who are kind of joining us live and also joining us with the recording, thank you so much, first of all, for kind of taking time out of your afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you're joining us from, to join in on one of the Falcons of the last decade uh, board events, the Fold board events. And so, really looking forward to hosting this with two incredible alums. And kind of diving into today's topic of really looking at the job market, talking about what it means in 2025 to break into the job market, whether it's your first role, seasoned vet, kind of going into new roles, career changes. We'll touch on a lot of different topics, and so looking forward to that. Before we jump in, my name is James Purdy, also go by JP. Um, Great to meet some new faces, and yeah, looking forward to this conversation today. A few just kind of housekeeping notes before we get started, folks. We are recording the conversation, so for those who are here, just want to disclose that we are recording. And Also a bit of background: the Falcons of the last decade board, the Fold board, it is really kind of a board put together to bring together recent alum and drive forward both some of the events that you're seeing as well as a number of other pieces of work that we're doing in the background, from local meetups to fundraising. And so, a really great way to continue to be involved. And we certainly encourage folks to continue to get involved in anything in the Fold space that they see, whether it's on LinkedIn, social media, or from Bentley Communications. Um, we will be using most of this time. Our goal will be to save about 10 or so minutes towards the latter half of the call for any live Q&A. There is I believe, a chat function here that you can use. And so encourage folks to submit questions if they have any that come in live. If not, we certainly have a lot that came in prior to registration, and kind of a list of questions that often come up from recent alum that we'll be touching on. Um, I want to hand it over to our two incredible panelists who are very grateful to have this evening, joining us from all across the globe. I'll let them introduce themselves, but Laura, maybe if you want to jump in first.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you, JP. Hey, everyone. Really excited to be here with you all. I'm actually currently in Singapore on vacation, so really excited to be able to connect with everyone from the other side of the world. A little bit about me: I graduated in 2017. While I was at Bentley, my major was a management with a focus in human resources, and really enjoyed that work. And then I live in Denver now permanently. I moved to the area about 3 years ago, through various career changes and new opportunities. I now work at Bet365. I am a recruitment business partner there. Goodness, based out of the new headquarter office that was opened in September. So really excited to be in that role, doing really cool work, and happy to share some more about that as we get into the conversation.
Thanks, Laura. Kara, over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, JP, for giving us that wonderful introduction. My name is Kara Goings. I graduated in 2016. While I was at Bentley, I majored in business management and minored in law. I thought at one point I would go down the legal route. I'm still debating it, so we'll see how that goes. Currently, I am a people partner or an HR partner at Moet Tennessee in New York. So I'm located in New York City. And when I was at Bentley, I definitely was focused on service learning. So that's something that's really important to me and what I try to tie into every career, opportunity or throughout my progression at my current job and at my last job as well. So super excited to just connect and talk more about Bentley and how my experiences impacted my thought process now and how everything is all folding in together.
Awesome. Thanks, Kara. Thanks, Laura. And to introduce myself, folks, my name is James Purdy, also a Bentley alum, class of 2017, which feels like a decade ago because it almost is a decade ago. Also a Gonzaga master's grad of 2024. Like Kara, I also was involved in service learning on campus, involved in kind of a number of other clubs from the Bentley Marketing Association, co-founded Project CI, the campus's Project Creative Industries organization, and was quite heavily involved in Ski Club as well. So folks may know me from there. I work as an organizational transformation strategist, and so I lead a team of about 60 consultants in my current role as a senior manager, when we do organizational transformation work, where our focus is quite heavily on people and process. And so this today's subject is certainly near and dear to my heart, as my job day to day is to build and hire teams, as it is for Laura and Kara. So, Kara and Laura, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to jump into kind of our first topic. We have a few outlined here. First is just really, let's talk about career transitions, right? I think this is something we get a lot of questions on, especially from folks who maybe go into a career initially after Bentley and switch, or want to change organizations and companies. Talk to us a little bit about how you think about career transitions, what recommendations, thoughts you have around that for folks either who want to stay in their current industry or market, maybe move to a different organization, or folks who might want to just completely change their career and go from A to B. Curious where your thoughts are. Laura, we can start with you.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it can definitely feel nerve-wracking because the new, the unknown, you're not sure exactly what you're going to find. So, some of the things that, and in my experience, having done career transitions, finding a new opportunity, whether it was for just a better fit, aligning more to where I wanted to build my career, which that was like my first move. And then my second move was really to find the next opportunity, given some of the changes that had happened, having been laid off. So, spending time really understanding what I wanted, what was important to me, and what was going to be the key things um, that were going to make an opportunity stand out to me. That's where I feel like I spent a lot of time reflecting, and I find that identifying the opportunities that you have in terms of how you can bring value to a new place. I know that sometimes going through the job process, it feels daunting. There's a lot of silence and rejections that happen along the way. But I find that taking time to just remember that what you bring to the table is really key, and identifying what those key pieces are and why your experience is unique and different, and why they should hire you, and really selling yourselves are some of the key things that I would say have really stood out to me. I know, again, with the competition in the market or things constantly changing, from the recruiting side of things, we're getting hundreds and hundreds of applications to our roles on the daily basis. So that can be really hard too, making sure that we are giving opportunity to review the applicants that are coming in, because we've all been there before, whether it's in a position of someone being laid off looking for something new, or someone looking for a change. So just ensuring that we also can give the opportunity to individuals who are looking for something. So again, a few things that really just stand out to me is taking time for me to reflect, understanding what I want, being intentional, and then really doing my best to stay consistent in the job search. Because again, it can take a while. Personally, for me, it took me about 8 months to find my new role, and that felt like a long time, but I leaned into it, the opportunity to have that time to be able to be very intentional and thoughtful about my approach.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, I think for me, when it came to leaving Bentley and getting into my first role, I realized that I was applying for the wrong positions. And I think it's really important for you to understand how long, the recruitment team looks at resumes, right? We, like Laura said, we have hundreds of applicants. So you want to make sure that you're applying for positions that you have a similar skill set for. I think that if it is something that may be a stretch, or if you are making a transition, then you should still have those buzzwords that will be, directly aligning to the job description. If you are not relevant, then unfortunately, the team most likely will not be interested in you. So I think, in my opinion, one thing that was really, I realized after sending out hundreds of applications, is to apply for roles that are relevant. I think in my recent transition with going to a new company around 2 years ago, I realized that I wanted to be strategic. I feel like that was also really important to me, is figuring out, okay, if my end goal is to be X, Y, and Z, how does this help? Or what are the what's the job that I should go to? What's the position that I should go to? What am I missing on my resume to make me an asset? So definitely, I'm probably more strategic than I need to be, but that's really important to me, because I do think that, like Laura said, applying for jobs is daunting. It's extremely time consuming. So for me, I didn't want to waste my time sending out hundreds and thousands of applications. I wanted the ones that I sent out to be really impactful. And also I wanted to stand out. So I do feel like going the extra mile of sending those notes, I do feel like that still hits. I do feel like recruiters still appreciate that extra note that you sent or that LinkedIn message that you sent as a follow-up. So I definitely would encourage folks to still do that. But, I think it's just being strategic, trying to find a way to stand out, whether it's sending those messages or sending, your portfolio if there's something that isn't included on your resume. And then lastly, I think understanding your values is extremely important to me. What are your non-negotiables? What are the things that you're willing to wiggle on? But also, working for a company that's aligned with your values is super critical. So those are all of the things that I looked for over the last couple of times that I've been in the job market.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really important point. That's something that I think certainly young people are more and more passionate about, but I feel like more people are becoming more and more passionate about, which is finding a company where you only want to have the role and the job and the team and the outcomes, but also the values, the ethics, the morals that that company shares, and ensuring that they line up with yours. Can you two both speak a bit more to that? How do you navigate that? How do you go and find out about that if it's not a large company that has that on its 10K or team or report? What ways can people look into those to find out the values of organizations to decide if they do want to apply to a role that looks like it could be a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think as much as we look into, everything else, so if we're planning a vacation, I did a deep dive on my company's website. I went to every single tab. I went the extra mile. I went to their LinkedIn page. I went the extra mile and looked at their post. I looked at, their Twitter to see if there was anything that they retweeted. My company is a little bit more well known, so it wasn't as hard for me, but I definitely feel like if you're able to find an avenue to dig deep or even find a friend. I reached out to a lot of people that I know that worked with my company in partnership capacity, and I said, hey, like, what have you heard? What are some things, right? So I think networking is something that we've kind of strayed away from since COVID, but there are different ways for you to network, even if it's virtual, even if it's coffee chats or, just sending a message via LinkedIn. I do think that people will get back to you. So I even looked at TikTok one day and saw day in the life of someone at the company. I didn't get far there, but I thought that it would really be helpful to help me interview well when I did get the interview because I knew everything about the company inside and out.
Any thoughts, Laura, on company values and alignment with personal values?
Yeah, for me, that's really important. And I would plus one on that in my search to my recent role with Bet365. They are a newer company into the US, but have a pretty large global presence. So that to me was interesting and spent some time again researching what that looked like. As Kara was mentioning, really the social channels, a lot of companies tend to be active there. Again, if it is a smaller, maybe they don't have a large presence, but a lot of them do. So really being able to navigate what is on there, identify if what they're sharing or posting or commenting is of interest to you, aligns with what you're looking for. I think transparency is a big one for me. So I always look to see sort of companies that are transparent in what they're sharing. Again, to the extent that they can, but just being able to feel like I have a good sense of the company's brand and identity before I'm going to engage in a conversation with somebody. And again, yeah, the network is huge. We've all been taught that networking is a really key skill. I think Bentley did a really excellent job in preparing us for networking and leaning into those networks. And even I remember setting out and doing lots of research to be like, okay, who's my second or third connection here that we have a tie to because we went to Bentley or we were in a different opportunity where the coworker was connected to this person. So really finding ways, even if it's the third or the fourth layer, to find people to chat with. Again, as Kara said, those are some of the key things that I found really beneficial, and just ensuring that what you care about is what the company cares about. Because at the end of the day, like if you're navigating a challenging situation, you want to ensure that you feel like you can support that situation based on how the company approaches it and based on how it aligns with you.
Great. Thanks both. I think something you both kind of touched on, is this idea of like breaking through the noise in like the hundreds of applications that companies get on a weekly basis, a monthly, sometimes a daily basis, depending on the roles. And not just breaking through the noise, but also ensuring that, you know, if you're a rock star, making that clear and present to the recruiter, the hiring manager, whoever it is that might be managing the process. as people go about that, what can they look for in job postings or different websites? What resources do you recommend to people that they keep an eye on as they're navigating the actual application process once they actually want to go and start applying to jobs? Maybe they understand the industry they're looking for. Do you still recommend LinkedIn? Are there other sites you recommend? Are there red, green, and yellow flags to look for in job postings? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. I would say LinkedIn is always a great option. I know a lot of companies will post their roles automatically on there and other boards. I tend to go directly for the careers page on the company's website. That I feel like is probably the most direct route. Depending on how a company or a recruiting team is navigating their ATS, maybe filtering by source. Careers page is a really is a great source that they're always going to be looking at the applicants for. So I would say if as best you can recommend doing that. I know too, with a volume of applications, sometimes you see a posting and it tends to be gone within a few days or something along those lines. Or for people in Colorado, there is that requirement of when you have to say when the posting will close. So really keeping an eye on that. And I would say if it's the right opportunity for you, being ready and to submit that application to get it going. The buzzwords thing is really important. Again, we're looking at hundreds of applications a day. So making sure that in your resume, you've got the key things that the role says that it requires, the experiences, whatever tech you should have knowledge with, to what level, really ensuring that all of that is clear and visible. And it's something that if you were to take a glance at your resume, you could pull out what those things are because we are going through and reading the resumes anywhere between like 20 to 45 seconds, sometimes even a minute if there's a lot of content on there. We're digging for things, but it is a quick review. And we are making sure that we can get through resumes, pull in the people that whose experience aligns based on skills or based on a certain platform that they need to be able to use or whatever it may be. So I think that's really the key thing to making sure that you stand out, that you do not get passed on at that first initial review. And then from there, really increasing your chances to speak to the team. And as a recruiter, I always respond to the messages that I get. I know that I was sending out a lot of messages, not getting responses or getting them like months later when at some points it may not have been as relevant anymore. So I try to be really timely with it. So I would encourage people to do that. And again, there is that feature where you can see who you're connected with or who your connections are connected with at that company and finding opportunities to find somebody to chat with. Maybe it's not the recruiting team, maybe it's someone in that department that you're interested in chatting with, or frankly, if it's somebody in a different department, but you have somebody who can connect you to that person, also another really great way just to get some insight into what they're doing, what the big focuses are, answer any questions about their experience, work-life balance, values, all the various pieces there. I would say those are some of the key things that we can control, that we can do pretty strategically, that we can be thoughtful about in how we approach our search. And it may not lead to the opportunity right away. Maybe it takes a couple times, or maybe down in a few months down the line, they're hiring that role again or something similar. But I would say that consistency, I think, is really important in taking charge of the elements that you can control.
Yeah, I would totally agree with everything that Laura stated. I definitely think that if you apply for a role, please be sure that you have the relevant experience. I feel like that's been happening to me a lot lately. It happened to me as someone applying for roles that I was applying for the wrong roles when I first was a senior in school, and I learned the hard way. And then now being on the flip side, I do see people that apply for roles and they don't have a core component of the role. So I think it's really hard for a recruiter to respond to you, and give you feedback on your resume if you're not relevant whatsoever. So definitely make sure you're applying for relevant roles. And I really do echo her sentiments of following up with folks on LinkedIn, whether it's the recruiter or honestly, I do really like that point of reaching out to someone that, maybe on the team. Usually most of these companies have employee referral bonuses, so they want to get that employee referral. So definitely, if you have an opportunity to talk to someone on the team and really advocate for yourself and impress them, or even learn more about their background, and it's a mutual thing. You want to figure out if it's a good fit for you, but also they want to make sure that they're having a good hire, so you can have a really meaningful conversation. And employees are open to that because they may get an incentive bonus, right, for putting you forward. So I would definitely echo all of those things.
Great. What I think something that I'm kind of hearing from both you two, right, is this idea of like what's in your control and what's not, right? You can control certain aspects of the hiring process, and we all know like you could also be a great fit for a role, and there might just be someone with 2 years more experience or something very specific on their resume that the hiring team just is looking for more, and that's what edges you out. How do you recommend balancing jobs that it's, hey, this might be more of a horizontal move, right? Maybe I'm a senior consultant and I'm applying to a senior consultant role versus, hey, I'm a manager and maybe I want to apply to a senior manager role, right? Maybe I don't have 7 years experience, but I have 5.5 plus this other thing I did, or this certification or this degree. How do you balance reach roles versus roles that you know you're probably well qualified for in today's job market? Kara?
I feel like it should be a good mix. I definitely think that, if I was to doubt out a number, maybe 70-30, right? I definitely think that there's opportunities for you to apply for a promotion or structurals. I definitely feel like what you said, JP, that it has to be a balance, right? Because at the end of the day, there could be someone that is a senior manager that currently has that title that's making a lateral move. So you always have to be thinking, and I know it's tough to hear, but you always have to be thinking, how do I stack up to all of the other folks that are applying? Because it is a very competitive job market, and we definitely understand that. So if you are applying for a structural, then I would hope you would have, maybe you have a master's, maybe you have X certifications. Those things still hold a lot of weight. Also, make sure that you check all of the other boxes, right? If it's just that one thing that's like, I have 5.5 years of experience versus 7, but I've worked for really, similar companies, I have similar experience, and I have extra credentials to get me across the line, then I definitely think that a recruiter would be open to it. Or at least, have a conversation with you and see how the interview goes. But I do feel that what I have seen in my field and in my opinion, that folks typically go for lateral roles just because there are more opportunities for you to actually land the role. I think that you should also be aware of titles too. I think that every job has a different title. For example, my company has analyst as a title. And, before coming here, you may think that that's something that may be a little bit more mid-level to senior level, but it actually is entry level. So definitely like thoroughly read the job description out. I feel like that's super, super important. And just make sure that you're applying for something that is really aligned with your experience. But I would say 70-30. I definitely think that if you are currently have job security and you're currently, you have a job, go for those stretch roles. You have no risk, you have no risk in it at all. So apply for that senior manager. If you have a job, definitely, like I would totally encourage you to do it because it may land and it may stick, and that may be how you get your promotion. But if you're someone that's currently on the job market and looking, then I would say 70-30.
Yeah, I think that's a great balance. Again, you want to make sure that you can increase your chances of getting into the interview process, chatting with people. And again, I know some jobs we may not need to tick off every single box, but if there is like a years of experience requirement that doesn't quite align with yours, again, all it is really valuable to see how the various experiences that you have or the projects that you've been on have pushed you to gain a different perspective within that type of role or have given you additional responsibilities. And the best way that you can highlight that, I would absolutely recommend it. Or if there's a way, I know I've seen a bunch of resumes that have come across and they've got like maybe a sentence about the company, kind of giving a little bit more context, especially if it's maybe a startup or one that's not as big. And I think that helps, right? Because if you've got your few bullet points and you're highlighting your impact and how your role did this and that, that's all great, but if you can add some context to like what the impact really was, if you were like the one person on a team of 10 and you were the only one in that specific area of expertise, like that's really unique, and that's going to potentially give you more opportunities to have done a lot of various work versus someone who's on a team of 5 and it's the same type of role. Kind of thinking about who may be in the market with you at that point in time looking for that role. So I would say find ways to really highlight it where you can and make it stand out. But again, really focus in on what you've done, those buzzwords, those key things that are going to be really important. Because again, I've seen a lot of resumes too that I come across and you're like digging for it. You're like, okay, where are the things that that align here. And I would say make it easy for your reader, make it easy for yourself to be able to highlight it, to talk about it. Sometimes too, in conversations, there are maybe certain experiences that come out and the recruiter hears it and like, oh, this is really what we're looking for. So again, really finding ways to prepare yourself if you are able to get to that conversation point, whether it be with a recruiter or with an interview team, whatever it is, to really highlight what is going to go past what's on that paper. The paper is your entry, kind of you being able to sell your experience and share why you're excited about it, and all the key things that you've done that would allow this team to picture you in that role and to see the impact that you would do, kind of just taking it to that next level. I know we're kind of not there yet, but just sort of thinking about how else we can bring that into play for ourselves to really sell our experience.
Great. Thanks both. That's very insightful. We've spent the first kind of half of this conversation talking a lot about what do you do in the actual application process, right? Kind of what resources do you have? What strategies are there? Something that I want to kind of turn our attention to, and some of the questions that we've had are, if I am in a career transition, or if I don't really know what exactly it is that I want to be doing next. What's that thing I want to be doing next? Um, let's talk a little bit about how you identify that. So, for folks who are really at any point in their career, what advice would you give to folks? What recommendations do you have about trying to understand what it is that they actually want to like do when they grow up? I joke about that a lot, but for folks who are in that space, what would you recommend? What thoughts do you have there?
I can get started with this one. I joke about that too, JP. Whenever I meet someone, I was like, oh, I want to do that when I grow up, or I want to be like you when I grow up. And it's like, you are a grown up, right? So I think for me, what I've really realized over the last couple of months and years is to ask a lot of questions. I think that if you ask a question, sometimes it creates more questions, which may create more questions. But at the end of all of those questions and those conversations, you do get clarity. So I think what I've done is, let's say you have no idea what you want to do. There's things that you gravitate towards. There's things that you like. For example, HR is a wide array of disciplines. You can do comp, you can do recruitment, you can do a lot. You kind of know the understanding and the fundamentals of each discipline. So you'll know, hey, maybe I don't want to do comp and benefits because I'm not good at Excel. You may say, hey, I'm open to being a people partner or a generalist because I like talking to people. I would then go and start that networking and having some conversations. You can start with people as simple as, what do you do? Do you like what you do? Maybe a triggering question, but you definitely could start with, hey, what do you do? What does your day look like? What are some of the trainings that you did to get into your role, to be successful into your role? So I definitely think talking to people has been something that has really helped me along the way. Just meeting with other like-minded individuals, utilizing platforms like, Bentley alumni, the Fold, all of that good stuff to ask questions and to meet people. If it's in person for coffee, or if it's, 15 minutes via Zoom, I definitely think just talking to people, asking questions. So those are a lot of my tips. I know people may say reading or listening to podcasts. I think that that's also options, but I like to get to the source and the meat and the potatoes of things. So I like to go directly to folks and just pick their brains.
That's great. Thanks, Kara. I would say a couple of things that kind of stand out to me, and this is probably the way that kind of I approach things, and the way that I think I tend to be more kind of introspective and take time to reflect, like, what are the things that excite me about a job? What are, as Kara's talking about, like, as you think about the next big thing, like, where do you see yourself going? How to be strategic in kind of what that could look like. Are you the decision maker? Are you the one leading the team? Are you the one sort of navigating a very challenging scenario? Or do you have all the really cool technical skills that can propel something forward? Kind of what you have, what's exciting to you. There's a lot of different roles and departments and things being sort of sprung up through various projects or experiences that you can find a way to find a few different options of what that could look like. Maybe it's a totally different field or like an adjacent field to something that you were already doing. And again, finding people to chat with to share their insights, but really taking the time to be like, okay, what do I care about? What's exciting to me? Again, we do spend a lot of time in our day at work, so it should be work that is exciting. It should be work that we care about. It should be work that we're feeling good about contributing to. So those are some of the things that I really have taken the time to think about when I think about my new role, because as we know, job titles can sometimes be a little misleading. And at one company, if they call it a generalist, you are really doing all of the things. But if they call it a generalist, maybe you're focused in on half of the time in one sector of what that role typically looks like. So being able to identify if there is an area that you prefer to focus on, or if you're really good kind of just doing a few different things within that umbrella of whatever the role or department may be. Because again, we want to make sure that we go into something and it's going to be exciting, because I've definitely had those days where they're really challenging. And if it's exciting work and the rest of your week is pretty positive, one hard day is okay to bounce back from, but a series of hard days that could definitely be really challenging and draining. And the last thing that you want is for that to sort of bleed into other elements of your life there.
Great. For folks who are kind of, in that career transition process, maybe going from one expertise to another, or doing one practice and wanting to transition, or maybe they're just changing industries completely, how do you recommend people best position their past experience for new roles? How closely aligned should a new department, a new industry be with the previous one? And how much does that really matter when folks are actually looking at jobs specific to more transitional phases of careers?
Yeah, I can jump in here. I would say again, as we've been echoing, I think the skills piece is really key. So the skills that you do have that can help you transition into a new department, a new career, a new area, whatever it may be, I would say that's where I would start. Bring those skills to the table. And even if it's a skill that you acquired in the one project that you did, and it was maybe your one interaction with that type of work, but that's really the type of work that you want to get into, highlight that first, like bring in that key skill first, and then sort of find the things that underline with that. I would say, again, as best you can, presenting it in a way that's digestible, that's easy to read, that's someone looking at it can easily find all of the various pieces that are there. And then if it's something that maybe you don't have a lot of experience with, finding a resource to get some additional training, to get some additional knowledge on something that you can add on there that aligns with the opportunity, if it's a certificate or if it's a maybe if you're really wanting to pursue maybe an additional degree or something along those lines, really going after that and diving full force and adding maybe that you're currently working on this, or that you've acquired this or that type of experience, credential, whatever it may be that's going to align you to that opportunity. I think too, if it is maybe a large transition, or maybe if it's a large gap that you have in your experience, I find value too maybe just calling it out, being upfront about the fact that you took time away for whatever it was. And I've seen people be very creative in the way that they approach it by adding like a job title to themselves of whatever they were doing at that point in time, or really just like a line explaining what that change was. Because if somebody sees it and you've got some really good experience and there is a gap there, you're going to be asked about the gap. So if you can address it kind of beforehand, then it makes sense too. I would definitely encourage you to do that when you're thinking about a transition or a re-entering the workforce, as I know some people may be thinking about or potentially already doing. So again, as best we can, use that 1 to 2 page resume to make ourselves really appear to be a really qualified candidate, because we are qualified, but just ensuring that we're highlighting that in the best way possible to give us more opportunities to get on the phone with somebody, to get into the interview conversations, I think the better.
Yeah, I totally agree. My only tip that I would add, and Laura, you're the expert here, but I do think that in my perspective, if you edit your resume so that, the relevant experiences at the top, per se, let's say if you're a marketing person and now you're going into sales, maybe you shift your resume. So now I see your marketing experience, right? Or you shift it so that it reads to whatever you're now interested in, or this new field. So if you are acquiring new certifications, that should be at the top. If you're applying to, the same job, I would say definitely edit your resume so that it makes sense. Because if I'm looking through your resume and the 45 seconds to sift for this relevant information, you may have lost me. So definitely I would say edit your resume so that, whatever you're applying for is at the top of it so that it's relevant. Even if you are making a transition and you had really good work experience, you can talk to that, you can talk to your experience and say, hey, like I became really interested in IT. That's why I got this certification and that certification. And that's why they're at the top. And that's why I'm applying for this role. But I had really great experience as a marketer before, right? And you can talk to both. So that's just my only tip.
Or one point that you made that I kind of wanted to follow up on, because this is the question I think that has come up at just a number of different fold meetings, at a different number of different alumni events. And I think it's a question a lot of alumni have, which is why do companies care so much about job gaps, especially in 2025, in a time where so many people have incurred layoffs and reductions in forces and job gaps seemingly are becoming more and more normalized? Why is it that companies still care about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's been something that I've been even navigating at work. Kind of for some context, we have people that have transitioned over from other countries, so they may not be as familiar with the American job market. And that's really where I've been able to come in and give insights into what it's been like navigating it, all of the constant change, and the fact that contract work became much more prevalent in the past couple of years than maybe it had been before. So being able to really call that out for people, I think that's key to just ensuring that a hiring manager looking at a resume doesn't assume that somebody based on their like either they're not from here or maybe they've been in their role for so long and they kind of see it a little bit differently based on a potential bias that they may have around it, but just ensuring that we as a recruiting team can say, no, this person's really great. Here's the context behind the various moves. We don't want anybody to be seen as potentially job hoppy or that they only join a company for a couple of years at a time. Because again, there is a cost behind every hire, and ensuring that we are bringing in the right people that are going to lead something forward. And what sometimes you don't see in the job postings is that maybe this role that we're hiring is the first person on a team that's going to get built out to something larger. So we are looking to bring somebody in who is going to stay, going to make the impact long term, whether it's a 3, 5 year plan, maybe even more than that. But some of these roles, like there is a big level of importance behind them and key elements that are going to kind of they're going to be the wheel, and there's going to be a lot of spokes that kind of come out of these opportunities. So I would say kind of thinking about it in that way, that maybe the person or the company that you're working with or the hiring manager is coming from a different place and they are curious or not as familiar with it. But again, a lot of companies that have done layoffs understand what that's like. I think just being able to highlight maybe what you were doing during that time, if it makes sense, if you were maybe doing some contract work, if you were taking time to sharpen up your skills in a certain area, or if you're really just taking time away for yourself, like that is totally okay. I think there is just a curiosity behind kind of what people were doing at certain gaps within their time to just help paint like, okay, as we think about this person as a potential hire, is this somebody who we could see as reliable, who we could see as somebody who's going to come in and really make the impact that we're looking for? So, from the sort of employer's perspective, I would say that there is an element of just ensuring that we bring in the right person that's going to make the impact that we want to make, that they are going to be and it's okay, right? If it ends up being that it doesn't align, if you do need to make a pivot after the fact, or within a year, 6 months, whatever the case is that happens. But I just think that they're sort of protecting themselves as we as job seekers, as individuals, are also trying to kind of to protect ourselves and sell our experience in the best way. So I would say those are a few things that I've seen in my experience navigating this recently, sort of having these types of conversations to advocate for the really great candidates who hiring managers like, are you sure they're going to stay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm confident. I've spoken to them. This is the context that I can add, or based on this resume, I think that they're great. And there's just been this type of environment that they've had to navigate through in the past 2, 3 years, or in the past 6 months, whatever it may be.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. Kara, any thoughts on job gaps or kind of addressing that during conversations?
Yeah, no, I think that everything that Laura said is spot on. I'm in a more of a people partner generalist role. So typically, when we hear job gaps, we're thinking performance management immediately, unfortunately. So I think that it's becoming more normal, which is really, really awesome because there has been a lot of unfortunate situations. I also think that people are just taking breaks for their own mental health or to find their purpose or to go on a trip, right? To really, find a lot more of that work-life balance. So I definitely think that folks are becoming more open to it. But I think it will always be something that is questioned and exactly like what Laura said, we are curious, right, to what happened at your last company. Why did you take a break? Why didn't you pursue a role so quickly, right? Were you taking time to reflect, or could you just not find a job, or what happened? So I think there's just a lot of questions when the gap comes. I do feel like it's not a deterrent as it was before. I definitely think that employees and companies are definitely more open to it.
And I can jump in here too, folks, for anyone kind of joining us now or listening to the recording, is someone who is not in a recruitment role by any means, which is where Laura sits in her expertise, and Kara sits very much in like a people organization and people management and kind of more generalist HR role, Kara, if that's fair. As someone who builds teams, and I think I am very much in the probably radical minority here, where to be quite blunt, I don't really care about any job gaps in the past, especially when it comes to like RIFs and reduction in forces, RAF, or like layoffs, right? Certainly I'm a big believer that we should never hold that against somebody, because I know firsthand that even some of the highest performers at my company have experienced that, right? And so it's not always low performers, depending on the organization. And so I think, again, probably more radical minority here. I really just care about, does the person sound like they can do the job well, right? I think that's really what it comes down to. And I would like to believe there's a large amount of both recruiters, HR generalists, and hiring managers that believe the same, right? That as gaps become more common, as people just simply take time away from work, as people become parents, right? Which is something that's happening for those of us in like our 20s and 30s. That's a big part of life, that becomes far more normalized. The other piece I would add to that too, right, is that I've interviewed in my current role maybe 30, 40 people, maybe 50 people over the last, 6 to 12 months, which is a small number compared to our HR people, or for someone as a hiring manager, that's quite a large number. And, I've had experiences where I hire someone who sounds like they're the perfect fit. They're going to stay here for 5+ years, and they might be gone in 6 months. And I've also hired people where, we hire them for maybe a more junior role, maybe a role where there's some redundancy and we have a few people doing similar jobs, and I'm not quite sure if it's going to be the perfect fit, and they turn out to be one of the best team members that I have, right? And so, and kind of everywhere in between, right? And so, I think that's important for folks to recognize. And Laura, something that you said that really resonated with me, which is it's okay to quit a job. It's okay to get into a job that you thought was your dream job, that you thought was perfect. Maybe you're 3 to 6 to 12 months in, and you're thinking, this company isn't what I thought it was, or this role isn't exactly how it was described. We've probably all experienced firsthand, secondhand, thirdhand being hired for a role, and it changes almost immediately, especially in startup organizations, smaller organizations. And so, again, I think giving yourself the leeway of knowing that you can make decisions for yourself. I think especially this is quite American, but we are trained to think that we need to follow certain guidelines, or that we have to be in a role for exactly a year before we can quit, right? And I think those are some good general rules to the point that you've both made. No one wants to be seen as a job hopper and someone who's in one role for 6 months, and then another for 12 months, and then one for 3 months, and then one for 24 months, because those can certainly be yellow and red flags on any resume. But certainly giving yourself the leeway to know that, like, you need to watch out for yourself, not always the company you're working for. The company is going to be just fine 9 times out of 10, whether you stay in your role or not. And that's certainly not a dig at anyone's success in their role, but just knowing that you need to take care of yourself first, and look out for yourself first too. So I love that point that was brought up. We have about 15 minutes left. I've not seen any questions come in, but again, for anyone who's here live, please do feel free to either send a note to me directly or drop it in the chat, and we're happy to answer live questions, team. One of the questions that did come in from someone who registered is, mentorship, right? Something we haven't talked about quite yet is how do you navigate the job search while you are perhaps trying to not tell your current company that you're job searching, or maybe you're doing an internal job search where you're looking at other roles within your current organization without trying to upset an existing manager or director, without burning bridges, things like that. So I want to spend a few minutes chatting about that. So I guess more pointedly, how do you navigate a job search while you're also working full time? Also recognizing that Bentley students, the type of students who are not probably working 35 or 40-hour weeks, who are probably 9 times out of 10 working those 50, 60-hour weeks, going above and beyond, trying to be, exceed expectations in their roles. How do you manage a job search, whether it's an internal role, external roles, and doing that with your current organization and manager?
Yeah, I can jump in. A large amount of my role is people development and learning and development as well. So I think those are two different avenues. I would say if you are, doing an external search, definitely, you know, I think it's okay. Personally, these are my thoughts to not tell your manager, right? Because I feel like there are some times where people do feel like they're going to be retaliated towards. So, I navigated my search and I did not tell anyone. So I feel like that's fine. I do think that at some point they will reach out to people from your job, right? So, you have to be very selective with who you trust at your current company that can validate your experience and validate your expertise. So, those are just things that you should probably think about while you start your search, right? Who are my list of potential people that can give me a recommendation, whether it's at my current job or my last job. So I definitely would recommend just thinking about those folks and will they speak highly to your skill set? Are those people that you've worked with before, or are those just friends, right? You will want to have a good balance of that. And I think that if it is navigating within your internal company, I do feel like you should get buy-in from your manager because I do feel like that will help you tremendously if you have someone that you're working with, regularly that says, hey, Kara's really great. We're gonna be bummed to see her leave, but I think she'll be a shoe in. I think that will go very far. And this could just be my biased HR hat. Wanting to stay in compliance there, but I do feel like you should loop in your manager if it is, what we call mobility, if you are looking for roles, whether it's at your current company or if you work at a larger company, you're looking at roles, within the group. At my company, we do reach out to either the manager or the HR partner. So you wouldn't want your manager to be blindsided. So I definitely think that you should navigate both situations with caution and definitely think about them and think about, how to message it. Of course, if you're telling your manager, they may be like, oh, is Kara on the job hunt? Like, should I plan for that? So, I don't think it's as clean cut for every single situation, every single manager. But I do feel that, if it is something that's internal, there is a big chance that that hiring manager might go up to your manager and then you didn't tell them. And then that doesn't make you look like in the best light. So those are just my tidbits on it. But I think it's a little situational.
That's great, Karen. I think what I'm hearing from you, right, is, with external job hiring, I think a lot of us probably follow a similar path where we're not putting the open to work on LinkedIn so every single person we're connected with knows that we're open to work. And we're probably not shouting from the rooftops in Teams or Slack or from
Yeah.
Outlook that we're searching for a job, but perhaps there are a select few people in the organization that maybe you fully trust with the confidence to tell them that you're searching and you'd like to ask for a recommendation, and kind of have that short list of people that you can give to a recruiter, to a hiring manager when it's called upon. And then with internal job postings, IJPs, probably being a bit more proactive and honest with both your team, your manager, your director, whoever it is that's going to get that call from someone like Laura or Kara, or someone from like yourself, and say, "Hey, James is looking for a job and he just applied to my team. Meanwhile, my manager doesn't want to be blindsided by that, right?"
Yes.
So navigating those both differently and just taking caution in certain ways. Laura, what thoughts do you have?
Yeah, I would align kind of again, I think the internal piece at times can sometimes be a little bit tricky. Like if maybe it is a situation where it's really not the best fit for you and you found a team that could be, and kind of navigating what that could look like. So I'm a big like process person and ensuring that you are very clear on what your process is to move internally, who's involved, what steps, at what point. If you're thinking about the move and the HR team can help you out, or there's a recruitment team potentially specifically dedicated towards internal mobility. That's something that I did in my previous role, reaching out to them and kind of having a conversation about the process, how to get involved. If you do have any concerns about potentially giving a heads up for whatever the reason may be, sort of getting in front of that and getting some additional support to navigate what that could look like. Or maybe they may not even involve the manager until a little later in the process, and that could be something that works to your favor. If you're really just exploring, just kind of curious what's out there, seeing if maybe another team could be a good fit. So just be clear on what it looks like and who you need to involve when and how to navigate it. Know that you have resources and don't ever feel like you are stuck in something because you're not really sure how to approach it again. I think there's always a way to do it, and it's just finding out who would be a good point of contact for you or a good partner when you're navigating those situations. And then kind of thinking about it from the team's perspective, regardless of the type of move, I think just ensuring that you can wrap up your work, you can transition what you have going on, you give enough time to ensure that people feel like you leaving may not leave the team in a deficit again. We should really be looking out for what's
Mhm.
going to align for us, but the team will be okay. They'll bring somebody in, or they'll shift work, or they'll work with the hiring team and be like, I need someone really quickly before so and so decides to move into their next opportunity. Whatever it may look like, there can always be something that is set up to put the team into a good position when you are leaving. But I think as best you can, kind of giving opportunity for that plan to get put into place.
Mhm. Yeah, you both raised such good points, and I think that the last I Kara, I love what you brought up about treating the job searches both internally and externally as different things, and treating the stakeholders differently based on that, so that you're not burning bridges, or you're still being proactive, you're still maintaining and building trust with new team members, existing team members. And Laura, I love what you brought up about this idea of like guilt, right? Like, am I going to feel guilty if I'm leaving my manager high and dry, or I'm leaving my team members who are going to have to pick up all my workload while they look for a replacement? That's something, as like an organizational transformation consultant, I'm particularly passionate about. We see so much burnout in the companies we consult, with people who either are working two jobs when they're transitioning to another one, or people who are being overworked because they think they need to make up for the fact that they're quitting in 2 weeks, or they gave their notice, whatever it might be. And I think there's certainly a toxicity to that, right? That is just uniquely corporate. That's something we need to continue to challenge. And on an individual basis, I think something that a mentor once said to me is, you can leave a job in the best way possible without burning a single bridge, while also making people lives harder. Those are not mutually exclusive, right? You can do all the right things, you can check all the right boxes, and leave everyone perfectly happy and leave in a place where they would want to hire you back the next day. But people's lives just might be harder because they're down a roll, and that's just the reality of the situation. That is okay. Um, the opposite can also be true. You can also leave a role as best you can, and maybe they're in perfect shape and they have a perfect backfill and everything lines up perfectly. But I think at the end of the day, it's a good reminder. It's not necessarily your responsibility to make sure that that role is filled in a timely manner. That's on people like Laura and people like Kara, and experts like that. But it is your responsibility to be as professional as possible, right? At the same time, and so there's kind of mutual responsibility going on there. We have about 3 to 4 minutes left. I have not seen any live questions come in, so I have one last question for you both, and then we'll wrap up for the evening/morning. Um, Mentorship. One of the questions that came in from a registrant was, how do you identify good mentors internally, perhaps externally, previous coworkers, whatever it might be, and how do you use mentors when you're going through the job search, career transitions, effectively? So maybe just 60 seconds from each of you, and then we'll wrap up on kind of mentorship and the job search. Kara?
Yeah, so I think what I really focus on is how are my relationships with those people, right? A mentor is someone that you should feel comfortable with. A mentor is someone that, I personally feel like maybe is in a position that you want to be in, whether it's a director or senior director, or maybe they're doing something that you really appreciate or something that you really value. So when I'm looking for a mentor, those are the qualities that I look at. Definitely someone that I trust, someone that can be honest with me. I think that, as a mentor, you need someone to be really honest and tell you, hey, this isn't a good idea. This is a good idea. So those are really the things that I look for. And then when identifying someone, at your current job, I think that's hard, but I definitely would start with building rapport and definitely start with, whether it's the meet and greet first and then the quarterly check-ins and then, formally asking someone is what I have heard you should do is, hey, would you mind being a mentor? And I don't want it to be, a heavy lift for you, but maybe it's we meet quarterly. I do have a lot of questions about my career. I'd love to get your buy-in. I really appreciate, how you've navigated your career. So that's how I would go about getting a mentor. My mentor ended up being my last boss at my last company. We have a wonderful relationship. I feel like I can go to him for anything, and he will be brutally honest with me. So that's why I feel like I chose him.
Very important. Brutal honesty is something we all need, even if it hurts. That's the sign of a good mentor. Absolutely. Laura?
Yeah, I would plus one that I think that that is huge as I think about the people in my life that I've come across that I really respect and value. It is that I also think that there's an element of people that you believe will say great things about you and will advocate you when you are not part of the conversation. I think that that is
Mm.
huge in these type of situations when thinking about a mentor and somebody who you feel comfortable with, kind of again asking for that support. I leverage my mentor for resume reviews when I was jumping back into things. I got their perspective on sort of making a change into a different area and what that could look like. This person has made multiple changes. So, kind of seeing what things were successful for them. Again, as much as we are looking for the mentorship, I think wherever we can sort of pay it forward to them or help out with something that they may need, whether it's helping them make a connection to somebody that I think that that also goes a long way. So, there is an element of a mutually beneficial relationship. And then with that sort of somebody who is also pretty connected. It's helpful when you have a mentor who can help make conversations for you, who can help open that first door, and then it's up to you to walk through it and keep things going. I think that those elements are really key. And it may be that this person down the line maybe has some really great people that you can chat with, or whatever it may be. I would say too, if you're really involved in certain organizations, if there's somebody at that organization outside of work or sort of within a professional setting that is of interest to you, or somebody that you think is really kind of respectable or admirable based on whatever it is that they may be doing, I would say definitely pursue those opportunities too. It doesn't really need to be somebody at your current company. It can be somebody outside of that, and they can sort of give you various perspectives on navigating different elements of it. So those are some of the key things that I would say, but always recommend kind of leveraging those networks and finding the people that you would see as valuable to your career search, to your life, to your network.
Awesome. Thanks both. Something I would add to that too for, folks listening on the recording and folks live now is, I had a mentor, this was maybe 3 years ago, who told me build a board of directors, right? Your own personal board of directors where, you don't just want to have one or two mentors who maybe come from the same company or the same background or the same subject matter experts, but build a core of people around you who will champion you, who will challenge you, who, to Kara's point, will be brutally honest with you when you need it, who will help you, to Laura's point, with resumes or whatever it is that you need at that certain point. But have kind of that board of directors, right? The same way a company brings in people who have different skill sets or perspectives or backgrounds, bring those same people to you and have three, four, five, six, seven mentors that you can turn to at different points in life for different reasons and in different needs. And I've always loved that advice. I always thought that was great advice, is to have like diverse mentors that you can work with. We are at the top of the hour. So first, Kara and Laura, want to give a huge thank you to you both for joining in your respective time zones, making time, the conversation. I personally love this as someone who helps build organizations. I learned a lot on this call, and we'll probably put the recording in my pocket for future projects. And just thank you both so much for making time today. For folks who are still with us, we do have a few more of these events coming up. We have one coming up on February 4th, where we really look at kind of mastering both exceeding at work and doing really well at work and spending your time there wisely, and also ensuring that you're enjoying life outside of work. And so we talk about a little bit about that balance between work and personal life. We also have another session coming up on March 7th where we talk about Gen AI and different machine learning and AI industries. And then one on April 17th where we talk about really hiring and what it looks like building teams and hiring from kind of the perspective of what Laura and Kara go through on a day-to-day basis. So also hope folks will join us for that. We can wrap up. Laura, Kara, again, thank you so much for joining. Great conversation. Nice chatting with you, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,